Recording. So we are rolling. This is Dave Carr here doing a presentation on WordPress for Toastmasters. Looks like it's going to be mostly among friends here, but just for anybody who needs to be reminded, yes, this meeting will be recorded. So your participation will be recorded along the way. There's a mute on and off button in the lower left-hand corner. So if you need to make things quiet, if you've got background noise or whatever, you can do that. But it's a small group. We shouldn't have too much problems with background noise or feedback or whatever. So I have a little bit of a canned presentation. I wanted to use most of this for a demo and time for your questions. But this is the kind of the canned pitch I've been using for a number of years, is the idea that if you have a Toastmasters club that's really awesome, you want to make it easy for people to find it in Google, you want to have a way of showing off what it is that makes it so fantastic, and then it's pretty cool if you can also have it be your agenda management tool. So providing you a way of letting people put in their manual, their project, or their path, and save that into the site and have that all be part of the same website. And we're doing this on the basis of software called WordPress, which is pretty widely used by professional publications like some of these professional marketing organizations to run their online publishing operations. It integrates well with social media. It indexes well in Google search. There are things that you can do to help all those things along. You can organize your content better for search and for social media. But the basic capabilities are there. There are lots of ways of extending WordPress. And so my argument is that rather than using free Toast host, which is something that only applies within the Toastmasters world, why not use all the professional tools? And this really came about because I was frustrated by some of the limitations I saw with the free Toast host program. And as I was just explaining to some of my friends here, I had never heard of EasySpeak at the time that I started down this path. EasySpeak is another popular Toastmasters website program, although it is really stronger on the agenda management, the organization tools for your club than it is on the marketing aspect. So I'm trying to bring together the best of both worlds as best I can. And I mentioned that there are lots of different ways that you can extend the base WordPress platform. I, a number of years ago, had worked on a calendar tool for WordPress sites called RSVP Maker for Toastmasters, which is really our agenda management software, is an extension on top of that. So now you can have meetings, but you can also have meetings that include meeting roles, and people can sign up for those specific roles. And I'll be showing you more about that along the way. Along with that is a styling extension. So the lectern theme is set up to make it easy for you to add Toastmasters branding. And because of some copyright rules and other issues, I can't actually send the Toastmasters logo out, but I make it very easy for you to add one of the standard Toastmasters blessed banners across the top of your page. And it also adds some disclaimers that Toastmasters International Brand Police are rather fussy about to make sure that you show that this is a trademark of Toastmasters International and you're using it as an authorized Toastmasters club. I have done some work over the years to try and make this work better on mobile devices as well. So, this is the same site reflowed into a mobile format with a mobile accessible menu. That works pretty well. Maybe not perfectly, still could use some improvement, but works pretty well. And even things like signing up for roles from a mobile device, I've done many times. I don't know how many other people have done it, but I've done it. It is possible. So there are a couple of websites associated with all this activity. WordPress for Toastmasters.com is the main site that I use to market the concept and also to add documentation. And by the way, I could use some help with many of these things in terms of the quality of the documentation, the completeness of the documentation, having other people to work on some of that, maybe present some training materials would be helpful, or even just to give me feedback on the assumptions that I'm making, because I wrote the software. I don't necessarily know what people don't understand until they tell me, you explain this like it's obvious. It's not obvious. So that kind of feedback is important. And then Toastmost is sort of the software as a service version where you can come in, you can sign up for a free website. And it's free because those websites are supposed to be supported by sponsor advertisements. And I say supposed to because right now I'm still looking for more advertisers, more sponsors to support the whole enterprise. So far I've been able to do it a little bit well. Jim Barber, who might, I don't know if he's online tonight, he had registered. Jim Barber is here. Jim Barber actually helped me out by registering a Toastmasters, or not a Toastmasters, but a speakers directory site was one of our first multi-month commitment advertisers, and I'm looking for another one to pick up the baton from him, because much though I'd like to take all of Jim's money, we should spread the joy around there. So anyways, if you go to toastmost.org, you fill out a form, you can get a free website. You could take the same software and install it on your own web hosting, and there are some advantages to that. Maybe you want to have your own individual domain, whereas these sites here, these are all subdomains of Toastmost. So online presenters, for example, is op.toastmost.org. It works out fine, really. And that is a club that I founded or helped found with help from Graham and others. It's worked out fine for us, and I set up shop there mostly because I didn't necessarily need to have to go through the rigmarole of setting up a separate website that way, and also it gave me a taste of my own medicine. So if anything wasn't working right, I was more likely to find out about it if I was in the environment. I often talk about using your site productively means using it to celebrate the talent that you have within your club, to show rather than tell people what's going on there. So this is a blog post announcing that somebody has won a contest. We cross-share that on social media, and if you look at that blog post, there's also a video embedded in the blog post. And anytime I post anything about the club, I would always also post something saying, hey, join us any Friday. So we're giving a shout out to this particular member and her accomplishment, but we're also trying to bring new people in the door. And we want to motivate her then to share this blog post as well and bring other people over to our site who are in her network and not in our network yet. I talk a lot about the value of video as a tool. You can use it for member education and training without necessarily making these people famous before they're ready to be famous. So one easy mechanism that I recommend for doing that is you can share content, video content on YouTube in this unlisted status. It's still easy to share that link, but if somebody doesn't have the specific link, they're probably not going to find their way to that particular video. So we use that in my brick and mortar club to get people comfortable with the fact that there's a camera in the room recording them, even when they give their icebreaker, so that they can go back and see how many times they said and the awkward things that they did with their hands, and they can use that to get better. But it also means that when somebody does a really spectacular job and they do want to share it with all their friends and professional contacts, we've captured that and we can use it. And this is a little demo of how I do that from a smartphone. So I've been using an old smartphone, taking it to the meetings, video recording people, and just using the YouTube app, I can upload those videos and then later go in on the computer and set them up for distribution out to the club. This works surprisingly well. You notice when I do this, I don't bother to put in the title of the speech or the speaker's name. It's easier to do that when I'm at my desk. But just for getting this stuff up there, I can actually, because we meet at a location that has Wi-Fi, I can start things uploading while the meeting is still wrapping up. And so I'm sharing video content with people the same day. They have that, just like we have immediate feedback from an evaluator, it's probably more useful to have an immediate opportunity to go back and see how you really did in that speech. So that's the end of the slides. I'm going to go to demo now. Anybody want to stop and ask a question? We do have a small group here, so please be free to ask questions along the way.
There are a few in the chat box, but I'm not sure they may be answered by your demo first.
Yeah. How do you create a template that will display the president and sergeant of arms each week? Okay. Yeah, I can show some of that. And yeah, we'll go over things later. And can you add members manually, or do you require an opt-in under the GDPR? Well, my approach has been that you're doing your GDPR sign-offs when you sign up with Toastmasters International. We're importing the member list from the Toastmasters International site. There is, you might have seen that when you RSVP'd for this meeting, there is a little GDPR style checkbox there saying that I understand that I'm signing away all my rights, I'm giving you my information. So I've made some gestures in that direction. And meanwhile, I'm waiting for somebody to tell me I'm wrong. Let's see. So I go back to the screen sharing. I guess I just wanted to, I didn't want to stop screen sharing. I just wanted to get out of the, there we go. So I'm going to go over here to my demo site. And actually not signed in myself. One of my administrator superpowers is I can pretend to be other people. Right now I'm pretending to be George Washington. And George can sign up for roles to be the vote counter or whatever. So there's a sign up mode. There is an edit mode. And there are some administrator's controls. So if your club is more of a command and control structure, and you only want the VP of Education to be able to do this editing process, you can limit that. I, for years, have allowed people to do it more openly. And part of the logic behind that is the idea that we rotate duties such as Toastmaster of the Day. Toastmaster of the Day typically helps organize the meeting, and so allowing that person to go in and make these changes can be helpful. So in the editing mode, I can see the whole list of members. We see a sort by first name, by last name, and then something that's relatively new is it lists people according to when they last did the role. So if they've never done it, they'll be listed first, and people who haven't done it in a while will be farther down the list. So we can make Amy Pond the timer, which Doctor Who fans may appreciate. One other thing that is relatively new is I can tweak the time that I'm allowing for each segment of the meeting from the screen. So if I want to give more time for table topics, I can bump that up, and we'll see the times in the margin there change. This is a time estimate, but it's a planning tool. For speakers, I might adjust the time and say that we don't have time for 3 speakers, we only have time for 2. You notice there's a little checkbox here. When I change the speaker, by default, it'll change the evaluators also. And so we should now see that there are 2 speakers, then a backup speaker, and 2 evaluators on my agenda. So this is all starting from the point. So I'm trying to show you the member experience first. There's more of an administrator, a club leader perspective that goes to how do you set this up in the first place. But let's try and take things one at a time. And again, I can go in a different order if people want me to jump around to different things. There are a couple of other modes. Some clubs operate more in the mode of we'll assign you when you're going to speak, as opposed to asking for volunteers. So one thing I got a request for was this suggest assignments mode, which is similar to the editing mode. And it's going to ask me, are you sure you know what you're doing? Because we had some mishaps with this. Because what this does is it randomly picks people who don't have a role. It's actually semi-random because it looks at whether they've done that role lately. So if they did it last week, if they were a speaker last week, we're not going to suggest them to be a speaker this week. But it's still an automated process. I did have some issues with people doing it by mistake and then wondering why people had been, they had all the assignments filled, but those people didn't know until they saw the agenda that they'd been assigned to these things. So I have to say, yes, I know what I'm doing. And then you do want this, let's say, so here's a random assignment. It's randomly suggested that Woodrow Wilson should be the topics master. And of course I can change that because I happen to know that he's going to be out of town that week. And the backup speaker's been filled in, the general evaluator's been filled in. If I agree to those suggestions or I change them and I'm ready to go, I would scroll down to the bottom and say Save Changes. There's sort of a similar role. So I'll go to a different week's meeting. There's a similar thing called a recommend, where instead of assigning people, instead of holding that place on the agenda for them, I'm suggesting to them that maybe it would be a good idea because they haven't spoken a long time, and I'm going to nominate them to be a speaker. What we do in this mode, we can add a personal note saying, you haven't done this lately. And I can go down the list and either accept or change these recommendations. And when I save this, these people should all get notifications. They'll get email notifications, and here's one of them. It says, I've been recommended for the role of evaluator. And click here to accept. And it says, you've accepted this role, thanks. So now it's locked in. So up to that moment, somebody else could have come up to the website and signed up for that role in the meantime. And if I didn't see the email soon enough, then I would get a notification saying, sorry, that one's been taken. Would you like to do something else? So this is a way of steering people towards taking the roles without being quite as pushy. So you can decide whether either of those would have a place in your club. It's really a matter of style. Let's see. Let me actually address the question somebody asked about having the names of certain people on the agenda week after week. And I'll show you what we do at my home club. So this is the agenda for Friday's meeting of Club Awesome Toastmasters as of now. This is set up to have a sidebar to the left, and all the officers are listed down the left. And then we have some notes in here saying president or presiding officer leads the self-introductions. It does have some references to, these are just notes in there. But if you wanted to see who's in that role, you could look at the sidebar. And we also have these indicators of the green, yellow, and red. It depends on whether you have a color printer handy. But that can be useful, and even if the color doesn't print, having for a new person who's taking on that timer role, having a little bit of coaching on what those timings mean can be helpful. So this is the printable agenda, and you can actually customize this layout. You can customize quite a few things. Let's go back here for a moment. So that was the print agenda view. The other thing we use quite a lot is an email out the agenda tool. So I can customize the subject line. I can add a note up top urging people to fill the open roles. And we have a listing of exactly what's open and what's filled. We have, there is an export to Word function that takes a few minutes to demonstrate, so I'm not going to do it right now. But another thing, I showed this to my home club, and I'm sure I've told them in the past, but nobody knew this was in there. Well, actually, it doesn't look that dramatic here, but it shows the contact information of the people who've been assigned roles. So that if you're trying to verify that somebody's going to be the Toastmaster of the day or is going to evaluate, you can reach out to them more easily and confirm. But also down the end, it lists members without an assignment. There's another feature of the website where you can track people who've indicated that they're going to be away for a specific meeting. That's actually shown between the end of the listing of people who have an assignment and people who do not. As people who are out of town. So this list of members without an assignment would only include people who don't have a role and have not indicated they're out of town. So they might be fresh meat, people that you can recruit to take on those roles. That's the idea. This little email to me thing will send me a copy of this information. I found it can be useful to have that on your phone if you're trying to text people. Let's speech introductions. is a separate screen in here. I don't think the speech introductions are filled in for this one. Let's say, but I could show you here. Speech introductions. So just having a separate screen where some of this is listed, it only works if people have taken the time to fill in that information, but you can encourage them to do so. And in my online club, I think people do it more religiously because there's no way to show up at the meeting with a piece of paper and hand it to the Toastmaster of the day. You either do it online or it doesn't happen. Let's say, and these last couple of things are specifically for online clubs. There is an online timer that with enough technical futzing around can be made to show up in the background of your screen if you're doing a green screen. So this gives you your green, yellow, red. And it actually loads in the times of the time requirements of the speeches that have been recorded on the resume, on the agenda, rather. Let's see. Sign-up sheet is the printable sign-up sheet. So at my brick and mortar club, we will print a sign-up sheet, take it to the meeting, get people to put in their information, then we'll come back and add that later. One useful thing for that is we have an editor that's in sort of the same multi-week format. I don't know why Google thinks that needs to be translated. So go away, Google. But this is a similar thing where we can use the drop-down list to assign people to different roles. We can just do it for several meetings at a time. And the planner is the individual members' multi-week look ahead at what they've currently been assigned and some suggestions of things that they might sign up for. So these are all tools that are supposed to make it easier for you to organize your meetings. And of course, they're only as good as the people who operate them on some level, but they can help. This is the back end portion of the site. So we have the front end that's visible to everybody, even though some information is revealed, like the ability to sign up for roles is only revealed if you're logged in. The dashboard is the behind the scenes area. It does give us some information on things we can sign up for, ways to navigate through the site, and each member can also go into a view where they can look at their own progress across their projects. So they can, well, again, this is a demo account, so a lot of this is not showing up too well. So let me turn back into May. So if I were to look at this, I'd see quite a lot of speeches that have been recorded in here over a number of years across both online presenters and Club Awesome, maybe some other places that I've stopped in recently too. Brian Dodd earlier asked about adding something, adding a speech that you'd given someplace else. So there is an add speaker role over here. So I could say that I did Your Body Speaks at the comedy club. And it's going to have today's date by default, but I know it was really on the 3rd, and I saved that. Of course, my profile is completely screwed up because I keep using it for demos. But I think down the bottom of the chronological list here, It might not show up immediately, actually. There is also a way of going in and editing information that's in the system. You can delete things that were put in there erroneously. So there are a number of tools that are available for navigating through those things. And we can also see some pathways projects. This is showing what everybody has done. I can also narrow it down to, I should be able to narrow it down to just me. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let me pause and take a breath. Questions at this point? Probably the next thing I'll show is how to build one of these agendas, but Brian?
Well, my first question I wrote down after the other one is incorporating PayPal in order to collect the money from dues renewal and from new people signing up. Lately, I've had 2 people sign up that never came to a meeting and pay.
Is that with your online club?
Well, no, that's one of my hybrid clubs.
Okay, because I've had that happen with the online club. There's a guy who signed up. He actually renewed at one point, and I don't think he ever came to visit.
I've had that happen too.
So, well, it's possible to do there are all sorts of WordPress plugins for enabling things like payment functionality. And so actually Club Awesome, I'm currently doing dues renewals that way. We started offering that just because, people would not show up to the meeting with a checkbook or cash.
Yeah.
So we did start doing PayPal there. RSVP Maker actually allows you to charge for events, but it's sort of a specialized use of PayPal. I haven't generalized it out. So the answer is you can do it with. I've also done Stripe payments, which is another one that actually happens to be better for the fees from overseas. Is what we use at Online Presenters, and that's again just enabled with a plugin.
Yeah, I've been incorporating on the free Toast and. I designed my own web pages before any of that came along, and you get the code and then you embed the HTML in the page.
Well, with the plugins, it's a little bit easier. You don't have to mess with HTML. You can really just specify the price and embed that in the page. I'm not going to cover that here because it's not really part of it, but I could help you with it.
Okay.
Let's see. So I wanted to show a little bit about how you make one of these agendas, because one of the basic things you do when you set up one of these sites, there's a default agenda that everybody gets as sort of a starting point, and then you can customize from there. So, and it gets into things like some people don't have all the same roles in every single club, or one club has a humorist, another club has a humor master, and they've called it that for years, and they prefer to keep it that way. Or Online Presenters has a watcher, whereas Club Awesome has a body language monitor. So just different names for somewhat similar roles, so you can customize all that. So if I go into this editing mode on my website, and one thing I should explain is that the Toastmasters world is going, not the Toastmasters world, the WordPress world is going through a transition to a new agenda editor. that's being introduced with WordPress 5.0, which is supposed to come out at the end of this month. I've enabled it on the Toastmasters.org sites ahead of time. And the new editor is actually sort of controversial because it's different, and it, sometimes some of the older plugins don't work as well with it. But it happens to have a nice synergy with what I want to do, because it has this notion of allowing you to have different kinds of content within the same site. And actually, to illustrate that better, I should look at a regular blog post or web page. Let's see. Wait a minute. So, let's look at a blog post. This is a blog post with an embedded video on just a little bit of text, actually. We edit this post. So this is the new editor, and it's based on the idea that everything is a block of content. You can have different types of blocks of content. If I want to insert a block, I put, so this is a paragraph block, here's a video block. If I want to insert something new, there's this little plus sign in the middle that gives me space to add something. Paragraph would be the default, but I can actually switch to a different type of content just by starting to type a bullet list. And one of the things you'll notice here is there is a little customized editor that comes up that's different in the context of a paragraph than it is in the context of a bullet list. So here it's giving me options of whether I want to indent one of these bullets, or maybe I want to switch from a numbered list to just plain bullets. So I can switch back and forth between those things. And of course, I have my regular formatting controls, regardless if I want to mark something bold or italic, or if I want to add a link. It gives me some place where I can type in an address. Okay. And so, because I don't actually want to mess up this blog post, I'm going to go back and remove that block, and we can save it back the way it was. But this idea of different types of content being able to have their own little editors is something that I've leveraged to create special content types for meeting roles and notes that go on the agenda. That's the point that I was working up to there. Yes, Brian?
Is it easy to move a block? Like you might put it in and then realize, oh no, I wanted that below something else.
Yes, there's these little arrows here allow you to move things up and down. I think you can do drag and drop as well.
Yeah, that looks quite a bit easier than a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, the video just disappeared, so let me make sure that I haven't messed that up for good. I don't think so. Oh, there it is. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So when I apply this same kind of principle to, okay, here we are. So here we are in the editor for a particular weekly meeting. And so one of the things we'll see over in the in the sidebar, it shows that this is a specific date and time. There's also a link here that says edit template. So actually, probably that's what I want to do. If I want to change the way all my meetings work, I want to go back and edit the template. So let's do that for right now. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, I'm going to leave that alone. All right, so here I am in the template. And so this is where I would come to say, I want to customize this role. And actually, we have so many people who want to speak. We need to have 4 speakers per meeting. And gee, we better dial up the time allotted to 30 minutes. Is that? Yeah, 30 minutes might be enough. So for each role, we have the option of picking one of the standard roles, or we can set it to custom role. That's where we would put in our humor master or something that's unique to our club. We can have a note attached to that role, like for general evaluator. We can define what it is that the general evaluator does in this club, which might be a little bit different from how other clubs use the general evaluator. And some of the, so that's a note to appear on the agenda, particularly if you have a printed agenda and you're handing it out to new people, guests who are coming in. These are things that can help clue them in to what's going on in your meetings. So if I changed speakers from 3 to 4, I want to change evaluators from 3 to 4 and boost the amount of time allotted for that portion of the meeting. So those are roles. Then we have the concept of an agenda note. And I always think of these as being stage directions. So here's where the president comes up and makes a big speech or makes a small speech. You can associate time with those things too, so that those times running down the left-hand side of the agenda will be appropriate for how much time you want to allow for that portion. So we're really trying to do 2 things at once here. We're trying to create a sign-up sheet and also create an agenda. So things like, I mean, the way we do it in my home club is the Toastmaster of the day introduces the people who do the other roles. It's a fairly common setup, but you might also need to have a note down the bottom that says, let's see, Toastmaster's agenda note, the dreaded counter report. So even though we introduced them earlier, this is actually where they give their report. And if I was in the club, I think that would need to take at least 4 minutes, maybe more. Oh. Yeah, we better make it 5. So we'll update this. But so far, I've just updated the template. So the template is a model for all the other events. So I can go out and view this and get an idea of what it looks like. But if I want to apply that to all my future meetings, then I now go through this process here. I see that this one has been modified independently, and that was just me messing around earlier, so it's okay, I can overwrite that. But if maybe I have a special workshop meeting coming up, and that one needs to be custom, and we don't want to overwrite it, then I would just remove that checkbox. So this will project out all our meetings. This is an every Friday club, and it's going to project out all the Fridays. I'll say update from template, And then all these will be changed so that we should now have 4 speaker slots. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 evaluators, and some of the other adjustments as well. So for the most part, this works relatively well. It all takes some learning. Let's see. Let me go back for one more moment to the editor mode. Just want to show if you're adding something new here, a new block. It shows the ones that have been used most recently up top. So those actually are the ones that I want at the moment. But if I want to narrow down the list, if it's not showing what I want to see, I can just start typing the word Toastmasters, and it will reveal these things. So an agenda note just appears on the agenda, not on the front end of the site, whereas a sign-up form note appears just on the sign-up form and not on the agenda. And if you wanted it to appear everywhere, you could just make it a regular paragraph. There is an absences widget that allows people to click here to say, I'm planning to be absent this meeting, so don't call me. And there's also this editable note, which is typically used, we have one down here, for the theme of the meeting. And the way that comes into play is that if I'm in the editing mode, I'll see that editable note down the bottom. And I can plug in my information and save it. And that will then appear on the printable agenda. So, there was another option here, agenda sidebar. This is where you would edit that information that goes on the side of the printable agenda, assuming you're using that format. So this is a good place to use things, put things like the club mission, maybe a dues reminder, a reminder that a district conference is coming up in a couple of weeks and where to sign up for that. You can put that kind of information here. If you just check this checkbox, it will include an officers listing. Of course, that requires somebody to go through and set up the website to have recorded what the list of officers is. But there are other reasons you would do that in this framework. And we can choose to make these edits apply to this week's meeting agenda only. So maybe we have very short-term notice that we want to put up. Like next week, we're going to be meeting at a different location. So that's only relevant to appear on the agenda one time. Whereas if we say template, then it is applied to all future events. Let's there was something else I wanted to show you, but why don't I take a breath and ask for questions again? Are there questions? Have I put you completely to sleep?
Let's see. Well, good evening, everybody.
Hey, Sonny.
This has been very enlightening. You've answered my question about how to add the theme and the absences. What about if you know your president is going to be the same every week and your sergeant at arms is going to be the same person? Is there a way when you create your template for you to put their name in so you don't have to add it each time?
Well, as far as the president, there's an officers listing I showed you can be something that you would include in the sidebar of your agenda. And you could also, when if you were doing that agenda note, you could type in the name of the president. But the president doesn't make every meeting either in a lot of clubs. So I like just having president or presiding officer, define it by the role there in that circumstance. But there are multiple things that are possible to do. You just have to figure out what makes sense for your club.
Okay.
And let's
my question to follow up on Sonny's is, how far can you plan out ahead? Who's going to do what in the agendas?
As far as you want to. And I have seen some clubs that only post the agendas for the next 2 or 3 weeks to the website, but you could go on either of the clubs that I'm involved in. You could go in and sign up for a meeting 6 months from now. I'm not sure that's necessarily a good idea, but there's nothing to stop you. And actually, I think I have had people ask me to, provide some way of stopping people from signing up too far ahead. I still think, I want to automate a certain amount. I want to make it easier to be the VP of Education and to be organizing these meetings. But I still think some human judgment comes into play. You may have to talk to people from time to time saying, you signed up to speak 3 weeks in a row. You really need to give somebody else a chance. So I'm not sure that you can automate all that.
Yeah, one of the other problems I find with Pre-Toast Hosts is that, like we're going to have a speech contest in next week or in 2 weeks at one of my clubs. And I can't remember the date when the last one was, so I could reuse that agenda again and duplicate it because and club elections, for example, that's another unique thing, but they reoccur every year or every 6 months.
Sure. Well, so we have this notion of event templates, and you can have more than one event template. And again, because it's a demo site, there might be a bunch of them. But no, so this one is the contest template. And this is something here where I can apply a template to an existing event. So I already have an event in the system for December 7th, but I want to make that apply the contest template to that. Now, one complication there is, if you're allowing people to sign themselves up on the site, and they've gone in and signed up to speak, and now you're turning it into a table topics contest, you may bump them. And so you still may need to communicate to people that you've made a change there. But if we go ahead and view this, so we should see that it now says contest master, chief judge. And I guess this was an evaluation contest this was set up for. But you can go in and customize these week by week. You could have several different templates for how you like to run your contests, and you could have a speaking contest template, a table topics contest template, and so on, and use those as needed. You can also go back through the system and find an old one and use that as well. That's also possible. So you don't have anything tagged on to the meeting as to what kind of a meeting it was, and well, I saw somewhere where well, you can. Let's see. Well, see, the title of this has changed from Toastmasters meeting to contest.
Right.
And if you, if you looked at, see, I don't think any of my clubs currently have a contest coming up.
Right.
But in this, on the homepage sidebar, well, actually, you can see, I think, in here, we should be able to see, there's that one that I just set up. Well, you can see that some of these say Toastmasters meetings, some of them say weekly meetings. So those were, those are ones where the title has been changed for whatever reason. Maybe if I reload this, we'll actually see the one I just set up for the contest, I think.
Yeah, I have a situation which I can do in Free Toast Toast is we actually postponed the speech contest for a week because we only had one person sign up. But that's easy to do because I can change the date of that thing, take out the other one, and change the date of the contest, and they keep everything in place.
Okay. Robert, I saw that you also had a question about contests. Did we answer it, or do you have a slightly different? Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I was a VP of education when I started working on this project. But it probably is more of a VP of PR thing, you would think, of somebody trying to organize the publicity, but we didn't have enough people in our club at the time. We needed to do something different, and I was looking for a better way to promote the club. And there are a fair number of clubs. The club that I visited with at lunchtime today has a WordPress site. They have a free WordPress.com website for their club instead of using Free Toast Host, but it doesn't have any agenda sign-up stuff in it that I can tell. So it's fairly common that people will use WordPress, but then they'll, I guess, use EasySpeak or something else to organize themselves, or a lot of people will be using Google spreadsheets or all sorts of things that I think are kind of awkward. I'd rather have it all in one package. So I've kept this going for about an hour. I think this is probably long enough. If you have other questions, I'm happy to follow up with you separately. So.
David, the last question is, in terms of timing, where do you tweak the timing? We seem to never end at 8 o'clock, and I need to add 15 minutes on my other club. So where would I do that for competitive communicators in terms of making it last longer? Where do you do that?
Okay, let me show that again. So when you
I think I saw it when you tweaked it, and you can put where the time is that
right?
it?
So in the editing mode, so it gives you this count of the times running down the left.
Okay. And
this actually seems, my demo site, this is a little bit screwed up. The times don't look right, but well, if there's no time associated with a role because these people are just being introduced at the beginning of the meeting, but for speaker, for example, this was, so this is set up for 24 minutes, and then padding time is supposed to be, so that's actually speech time. So if you had 3 7-minute speeches, that would be 21 minutes, right? Then if somebody had a 12-minute speech, then you'd be starting to run out of time. Padding time is literally padding the agenda for the time it takes to do introductions or people to fumble with their slides. Those things that aren't strictly speaking part of the speech, but they take up time anyway. So it's sort of a fudge factor that you can put in there. And then if I decide to change the number of speakers, it prompts me, do you also want to change the number of evaluators? But when I change the time here, it does interactively you see the times blink and they come back. It's maybe easier to see down here. If I give more time to the general evaluator, you'll see that the next time adjusts up or down depending on what I changed. And then I can go down and see that that now the meeting's running too long, and so maybe that means I need to cut table topics or whatever. So so this is a way of doing it sort of on the front end of the site. What I wanted to do here was provide a way for the Toastmaster of the day to do it, whereas the Toastmaster of the day might not have editing rights to the site, so they may not be able to go in and modify the underlying document. So I could also change the times by going in here and clicking on those variables. Let's say it's all very simple until I try and demo it. But if I wanted to change things in here, I can also change them here. But it's just I haven't found a way to make the to do that, have that same effect where the times change when you change your time estimates. So two different ways of accomplishing the same thing. But
I'll probably do the first one. I think. Yeah.
Do it the easy way. That's a good plan.
Yeah.
David, is it fair to assume that most members would never need to come into RSVP events in here, that they would just use the stuff that's at the front end that you were showing a moment ago?
Right. So what I'm showing you is something that the the VP of Education should know their way around how to restructure the agenda. Maybe a couple of the top officers. If your club has a webmaster, if you have a techie, it helps. Somebody who is going to be in charge of helping to figure these things out. So, I mean, I like to say that it's easy, but easy is in the eye of the beholder. It's easy for me since I've been messing with it for years. It's not as easy for everybody else to absorb all this, but we try to make it as easy as we can.
Where do you give people rights? Like if I'm the webmaster, how would you give one more person a right?
That's a good point. So let me. So.
Bye, Jim Barber.
Yeah, pardon me. My easy-to-use website is not cooperating with me at the moment. Hold on a moment.
Okay. If not, you could just email
Well,
me.
no. Let's show it. Let's get it on video. So the settings section here, I go into the Toastmasters settings. And there is a section here where I can assign members to leadership roles. Franklin Roosevelt's doing two things now. And I can make somebody an administrator, and I can make one or two people managers. So an administrator can change all the site settings, which also means that they can mess things up to a greater extent. But a manager has editing rights to the site and also can add members, edit member records, can do most of the things with the site, just not there's a few things that are more complicated that are reserved for the administrator. So,
okay, cool. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to say good night and thank you all for tuning in. And this wasn't a huge audience, but it was a good audience. So
thank you for all you do. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your questions. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, David.